were to ask you how many resources you have, what would your answer be? I think generally most people's answers would be in monetary terms. We use money as an exchange to get something that we want. What people don't realize is that we have various other resources also available to us that we don't really think about that much. They serve the same purpose. You spend them to get things that you want. Now you can't keep them in a wallet or in a bank account, but that doesn't mean you aren't being influenced to try and spend them. Everywhere you look, you're being influenced to try to spend your money. Do you not think this is the case for all of your other resources as well? We're talking about time, energy, attention, emotion, the resources we've mentioned previously in other videos, those resources that we care so much about that make us focus on the center of the alt-centrist spectrum. Today we're going to talk about those resources and how modern society is fighting tooth and nail to keep you in a state of consumption and distracted spending of those resources. Climate change, COVID, Ukraine, Russia, Putin, NATO. These are all issues you've probably heard in the news lately. The question is, why do you pay attention to these issues? Is it simply because you are presented with them? Is it because those are what you are told to care about? Have you ever actually consciously evaluated why or how any of these things actually affect your day-to-day life? Advertisements, marketing campaigns, social media, driving trends that you think you need to keep up with. This has become widely accepted in modern society. In fact, it's beyond accepted. It's actually internalized by the majority of our population that you are constantly being fought for over the expenditure of your money. What hasn't been fully realized is that institutions are trying just as hard, if not harder, to get you to spend your other resources as well. The time, energy, emotion, and attention. Your brain won't see it as a distraction because you think you got something out of the transaction. Again, the same way you exchange money for something, you're exchanging your time, energy, and emotion for entertainment, for emotional gratification, you name it. You're always getting something in exchange, or at least they want you to think that you are. Now, just like marketing companies want you to spend your money on frivolous purchases or repeat consumption or things you're going to use once and never use again, this is often the case with your other resources as well. Your time is not being spent well. Your attention is not being spent well. In other words, you're not getting anything valuable in exchange for your attention. For a lot of people these days, that's simply involvement. Involvement in a political party, involvement in a movement, involvement in an ideology. The second largest thing that's being exchanged for your time, energy, and emotion is entertainment. Now, people spend countless hours watching TV, consuming YouTube videos, because they think they're getting something from that. They convince themselves that it's educational content. They get some kind of entertainment value out of binge watching the latest series on Netflix. We need to start thinking of these other resources as just as important as money. Same way that we budget ourselves with money, we need to be budgeting our time and attention. I'm going to refer to the expenditure of these other resources as distractions. I think distraction is an appropriate term because unlike the resource of money, time, energy, emotion, and attention are all perpetual. You are expending them constantly, all day, every day, for your entire life. From the moment you wake up until the moment you fall asleep, your attention is being expended. In the immediate few moments after you wake up, your attention may be focused on how tired you feel, how much you want coffee, or the throbbing sensation in your bladder. Wherever your attention is focused is where action and energy expenditure will follow. If your attention is directed at how tired you feel, you will expend energy attempting to remediate that feeling with caffeine. This is a quick and easy example of how your attention expenditure translates into real-world implications. None of the actions you commit throughout the day happen without some allocation of attention. With a basic understanding of attention, we can move on to acknowledging that our attention doesn't exist in a vacuum. There are numerous sources of stimuli that might trigger a shift in attention throughout your life. These exist simultaneously on different layers depending on urgency and timescale. Big external sources of stimuli might include your environment, other people, or informational sources, including social media and news media. These days, we consume media unquestioningly. Half of the population consumes media as a source of truth. They believe the media is providing legitimate information and keeping them informed. The other half of the country also consumes media, but in an adversarial manner. They consume media to critique it, to identify lies, to uncover hidden motives and build counter-narratives. In the eyes of the news media, it's all a win-win. Even the side that advocates against the consumption of media is itself directing attention to the media. And this is exactly what the golden media is. Just like the marketing companies want you to spend your money on their products, the media companies want you to spend your time and attention on them and their narratives. Positive attention, negative attention, it doesn't matter. As citizens of modern society in the West today, there are innumerable sources of distractions vying for our attention every single day. Video games, YouTube, Netflix, pornography, drug addiction, social media. All of these things are designed to provide you with something that makes you think you're getting value when in reality, if you actually consciously observed and intentionally evaluated, you probably find that you're not really getting much value out of any of these at all. We'll talk about that more in a little bit, but the question is, what are they distracting you from? Now, there are two answers to this depending on your perspective. There's one that involves intent, and there's one that involves no intent. The first answer, which involves no intent, is simply that they are operating based off of incentives. They aren't intentionally trying to distract you from anything. They're simply operating based off incentives. You are the successful end product of corporations trying to generate revenue. You think they exist to provide you with some sort of entertainment or to inform you or to connect you, when in reality, they exist simply to generate profit. Now, if the idea of your life's work culminating into a number on a spreadsheet makes you feel a little uncomfortable, well, you might just be an alt-centrist. Now, the second answer, which actually does involve some intent, is that they are intentionally trying to pull you away from the center of the alt-centrist spectrum. So what occurs at the center of the alt-centrist spectrum? Well, it's pure creation. It's pure productivity. When you're expending time, energy, emotion, and attention on the things that are closest to you in your life, your goals are going to be achieved. Your dependency on external systems is going to be reduced. You will not be a number on a spreadsheet. You will not simply be a revenue-generating object for massive corporations. Remember, the reason we call ourselves alt-centrist is because we aim to focus our lives on the center of the alternative spectrum. You can't really be an alt-centrist if you live a distracted life, wasting all of your time, energy, and other resources on things that don't really affect you or provide you with some beneficial outcome. You are a consumer, not an alt-centrist. And that's fine. There's nothing wrong with being a consumer. I'm not saying that everyone should be an alt-centrist or that this is the default or the standard by any means. But the question is that you need to ask yourself, do you want to be distracted? The reality is, most people are lazy. Focusing on the center of the alternative spectrum is a lot of work. And believe it or not, a lot of work is involved in achieving goals and ambitions. Most people simply exist in a state of complacency or a state of pure uncritical consumption. Now again, there's nothing wrong with wanting to waste time, assuming that you have no goals or ambitions, or that nobody wants you to succeed in life, or that nobody is looking to you for dependency. There's nothing wrong with being lazy or wanting to be distracted. Now, if you have goals or ambitions or things that you want to achieve, or other people are counting on you or looking up to you to succeed in some way, then you do have a moral obligation to focus on the center of the spectrum and expend energy toward the achievement of those things. Uncritical consumption is the continued state of consuming without consciously evaluating your consumption habits. In alt-centrism, we call this living unintentionally. Your life is just a long string of impulses based on whatever you feel like doing in that particular moment in time or in that particular day. It's understandable that people would fall into this trap because these distractions are designed to be just that, a trap. All of these distractions are designed to appear valuable. This is why people not only continue to consume them, but they actually argue for the continued consumption. You have fears that you need to have resolved, questions that need to be answered, likes and followers to be gained, friends and family to stay connected with, and lives to be vicariously lived. People in a heavy state of consumption will often ask themselves, what will happen if I don't pay attention to all this stuff anymore? If I don't consume the news, I'm not going to know what's going on. If I'm not present on social media, I can't stay connected with my friends and family. If I don't watch Netflix, I won't know what happens in the latest series. If this is the question that came into your mind, I challenge you to present real utility for the things that you may be consuming in your day-to-day life. Is there anywhere where you could live more intentionally? Are you stuck in habits? Are you stuck in patterns that simply repeat themselves every day? Do you find yourself scrolling through Instagram before you go to sleep every night? Do you find yourself unconsciously going to that television set anytime you have a spare moment of time? Each one of those distractions pulls your time and energy away from the center of the spectrum. But the problem is nobody's actually taking the time to sit down and consciously evaluate the decisions that they make. They are living unintentionally. Now, the concept of living intentionally is a big one that we will be covering on this channel in the future as well, and this is kind of a little lead into that topic. And I can't sit here and say that everything you consume is simply a distraction. It's up to you to evaluate your life and your consumption habits. So chances are, if you're consuming something, whether that be food, video games, pornography, news media, or Netflix, you're probably being distracted from your actual goals and ambition. Again, the same way we treat money, we need to be treating our time and attention as well. We budget our money. Why aren't we budgeting or consciously spending our time and attention? My objective is to get you to live a more productive life. Now notice, I'm not telling you how to be productive. I'm not telling you what you should be doing other than consuming these products. The beauty of the alternative spectrum is that at the center, for everyone lies something a little bit different. For some people, it might be starting a homestead or building a family, getting married, moving to a different country, getting a better job, creating more art. All of these things lie at the center of the spectrum and get neglected as you spend your time and attention on things that are further out on the spectrum. If you're deeply entrenched in these distractions, it will be difficult to pull yourself away from them. Now, there are multiple psychological tricks that are being used to keep you engaged in these products. Think of video games, for example. If you've ever played a cell phone video game, you'll know there are a myriad of different mechanics designed specifically to keep your attention coming back to that product. They have daily login bonuses, disincentives for staying away from the game for too long. They have new content updates, notifications that pop up on your phone if you've been away for too long. All of this is designed to keep your attention on the product while you're thinking the whole time that they exist to provide you with entertainment. The process of breaking away from these distractions will involve some uncomfortable realizations about yourself. No, you're not actually consuming artistic entertainment on Netflix. All those YouTube videos that you think you're getting educational content from, well, reality is you're probably just trying to live vicariously through other people's experiences on YouTube. You're trying to stay connected with friends and family on social media, well, reality is, you're probably just addicted to getting likes and attention and approval from other people. The problem with all of this is that when you adopted these behaviors in the beginning, there was never a conscious decision on your part to fall into this behavior, to fall into these patterns. This is another psychological trick called thinking past the sale. Thinking past the sale is the process of getting you to accept something without consciously acknowledging it. We can use the car salesman example where you're on the lot talking and after a short period, this car salesman asks, "Would you like that in brown or black?" We never actually decided that I was going to purchase the car. What that does is it gets you to skip the question of whether or not you actually want to buy the car and assumes that you want to buy the car. The same thing happens with a lot of these consumption habits as well. I didn't consciously evaluate the pros and cons, the risks of joining social media platforms. I just did it because my friends and family were there and it was just understood that we need to stay connected and this is the platform to do so. There were no other alternatives possible for staying connected. Of course not. I have to consume news media, otherwise how am I going to stay informed enough to vote in the next election? So I propose that the same way we got into these things is the same way we can get out. And that is, instead of failing to ask ourselves how and why we're doing these things, we need to sit down and consciously ask ourselves how and why we're doing these things. How do I spend my time every day? Where do I spend my attention? Where is my free time being allocated to? It's very possible that the disgust you feel from acknowledging that you waste a lot of your time will be enough to kick you out of these habits alone. But it's important to not only stop and evaluate where we are now, but also get ourselves into a pattern of thinking moving forward into the future. As society evolves, as technology evolves, distractions are going to evolve as well. The solution to this is the process and the philosophy of living with intent. Everything that we do, we need to be conscious and intentional with, including the expenditure of not only our money, but all of our other resources as well. You wouldn't walk outside your front door and throw money out into the wind, but we seem to treat our time and attention in that exact manner. I'm not going to hand over my credit card or a stack of cash to somebody unless I can see something tangible that I'm getting in return that's providing me with some kind of value. Now, why would I hand over my time and attention and not do the same? I need to make sure that what I'm getting is worth the transaction. Ideally, the end result of everyone refocusing their time and energy at the center of the alternative spectrum would simply be a much better society for all of us to live in. As individuals focus on their own goals and ambitions, a better life is being built for everyone from the ground up, not from the top down, which seems to be the paradigm right now. We want to throw all of our time and attention to the outer rings of the alternative spectrum and hope that somebody else is going to make a better life for us, when in reality, the power to do so is always right there in your own hands. Thanks for watching, and be sure to subscribe for more alt-centrist philosophy.